Good day, and today we have on my show is David Fenster, our state's attorney for Addison County, and that's elected officer, right?
It is, it
Yeah.
is. Thank you for having me.
Okay, and so thank you for coming, and so we're going to talk about what you do,
Okay, great.
and now you have a new investigative unit. And it's just about what, 2 years old or 3 years old?
It's 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 years old, but it's
yeah.
getting up there. The Addison County Unit for Special Investigations.
And what does that mean for the public to know
Sure.
what it is?
So several years ago during the Douglas administration, there was a bill passed which provided that every county would provide for a special investigative unit so that victims of domestic, sexual and victims of sexual abuse and victims of serious child abuse would have a dedicated unit of specialized investigators who would handle those cases. And as I recall, I actually came on this show some years ago with our still executive director, Fred Saar, and we talked about the unit, and we were in the process of getting it up and running and getting it situated, and we've come a long way since then, and I just thought it would be great to give you an update and let you know where we are now, and explain to people again what exactly the unit is and what it does, and I just thought it was time for an update.
Yes, it is. So let's go.
Sure. So the Addison County Unit for Special Investigations, as I said, handles sexual assaults and serious incidents of child abuse. It's located now in the sheriff's office. It's on the second floor of the sheriff's office, and it's got its own dedicated space. It's got a conference room. It's got some office space for the individuals who work there, either full-time or part-time. It's got 2 interview rooms that I can tell you about, one of which is a child interview room and the other is an adult interview room. And it's got a waiting area, which is not that uncommon for an office space to have, but great lengths were gone to make sure that the waiting area was comfortable for the friends and family and support folks who might come with a victim who's been victimized by a sexual assault or an incident of serious child abuse.
Mm-hmm. This is a very difficult subject, and we're working on it, and we're working on a bill for sexual well, I don't come. It's gone away from my.
Sure.
But the sheriff, the people are It's
Sexual assault cases?
no, it's stalking.
Oh, stalking cases, yes.
Stalking, and stalking really was somebody following you around and stuff. Life has changed with technology. And so they do it with computers and all different kind of forms that come through, and it's really serious business. I mean, and this one woman, had to do all kinds of things to try to hide from him, and keeps going, but we don't have the law to protect them as much as we'd like, so we're going to put this bill out so she gets, or a lot of the women, it's mostly women. If you have any ideas about this.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to talk to you about it at length. We do have a stalking law, which I know that you were referring to. It can be difficult to enforce that law.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of conduct that is not. There's a lot of conduct that can be either innocent conduct or constitutionally protected conduct. So it was great pains when the law was originally written. Great pains were taken to make sure that the conduct was indeed criminal and harmful, and there were provisions put in there to try and protect conduct that was, either innocent or constitutionally protected. And sometimes it's difficult when an individual is using what might otherwise be constitutionally protected conduct, but still having an impact on someone and causing them a significant amount of emotional distress. And so it can be difficult sometimes to enforce the stalking law or to bring a charge of stalking, because there are strict requirements that must be met, and sometimes the evidence just doesn't give us what we need. So, it's great that the legislature is taking another look at that law and seeing what can be tweaked and what changes could be made to make it a better law to protect victims.
I spent a couple hours over the weekend.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I have a whole entire statutes, and I keep it up to date. And I laid it all out, and I laid out the bill, and an old bill, and then I tried to put together something, and then we'll work on it, and our legislative council will work on it and see if we can get something that will help people.
It's a challenge, and I know that it's going to be. I know that it won't be easy for the legislature to deal with it, only because there's a lot of conduct that's important and constitutionally protected that has to be protected and not criminalized, and then there's conduct that's innocent and not intent, and is not something that we would want to criminalize. And trying to find the broad statutory language that would cover both protecting those folks engaged in protected speech, but also protecting the victims of someone who's trying to really interfere with somebody's life and liberty. And stalking cases can be devastating for the victim. And especially in this day and age with the internet and with texting and electronic devices, the number of ways in which people can reach out and contact other people or put harmful information out about other people, it's just exploded. And when I first started out, you had telephones. And the only way to make contact with people largely was face-to-face or by telephone. The internet, as we know it today, didn't exist. There was an internet, but it was in its infancy. And now you can contact people through email, Facebook, Skype, Snapchat. The list goes on and on and on. And those are just to name a few. And trying to find the resources for law enforcement to be able to gather the evidence from all of those sources is a challenge, as well as trying to decide what conduct is criminal and what conduct's not can be a challenge as well.
So is this group that we were just talking about, a special investigation unit, do they help people who are under, person?
The Special Investigative Unit hasn't moved into the area of domestic violence or stalking just yet. I know that it's a constant conversation that we're having amongst the law enforcement community and the special investigative units about whether that's something that the units should start to cover. Right now, the Addison unit is really covering just sexual violence and serious incidents of child abuse, but there's always conversations about expanding that. I mean, I know that one of the things that some of the cases that our unit has looked into have been things such as sexting. Some of the things that the unit's looked into is they've helped with sex offender registry checks. So the units they can take on a broader role. The question is, how do you maintain the unit so that it still has enough resources to do what its core competencies are, what it's designed to do, that specific forensic interviewing, largely of children, and then still grow them into other areas without going too far too fast. I can tell you that in our unit in Addison County now, I mentioned that we have a child interview room. It's a room that's specifically designed to be child friendly. It's designed so that to try and take the intimidation of the process away from a child so that a child can speak freely about what's happened. It's equipped with video so that not only the child can be videoed, but the interviewer can be videoed as well, so that when they do, because when they do the forensic interview, that can all be shown to folks later on, and we can show in court that the interview was done, it was done appropriately, it was not unduly suggestive, and it was done in a proper forensic fashion. The unit has also been instrumental in providing opportunities for training for forensic interviewers, to get people to learn those skills that they need to learn so that they can interview a child in a way that not only elicits the information that the child might have, but does it in a way that's not suggesting any answers to the child. And that's very important, as you may know, because the courts are going to, well, because obviously you don't want anyone to suggest anything to a child, but also when we go to court, we need to make sure that we can prove to the court that the interview was done in a way that was forensically sound and not unduly suggestive.
Mm-hmm. Do you have many cases of stalking in Addison County? Either the one that we're working on to protect them with use of all kinds of technology, or not much problem in Addison County?
It's hard to put a number on it like that, in part because I honestly didn't come prepared to talk about that. But I mean, I can tell you that from memory, we probably, I think I've probably seen 1 or 2 stalking cases in the last several years. I know that they can be difficult to bring. I know that we don't see all the cases, and what I mean by that is there are any number of cases where an individual goes to maybe Women's Safe to get a relief from abuse order, but never makes a criminal complaint to the police. I know that there are also individuals who go to the Superior Court in the Civil Division because just to give a quick lesson on the law of these things. So there are abuse prevention orders, which most people are probably familiar with, which came originally out of the family court. And to get an abuse prevention order, you need to have a certain type of relationship between the two individuals. They either need to be family members or household members or spouses, things like that, in which case you can go to the family court, you can get a relief from abuse order. But that order wouldn't be applicable for 2 people who didn't have a relationship. So if someone were to begin stalking someone else, but they had never dated, they had never been married, they had never had a prior relationship, there was, a few years ago, no mechanism for them to get a relief from abuse order. Since then, the legislature has passed a bill which permits those folks, under the certain circumstances, to get a civil stalking order. And that order would keep the other person away from them. And so, the reason I bring that up is because I know that there are people who get those stalking orders and they don't make a report to the police as well. So it's hard to get a handle on exactly how many instances of stalking might be going on in Addison County, because there are other avenues for people to get relief, which is good that they can get their relief, but but we often, not often, but it makes it difficult for us to track the numbers, because if it doesn't get reported to my office, we won't know about it.
And sometimes it's hard because the law is old, well, not that old, but life has changed so much with technology that they can't get a change through the courts because it's not in the law. So we got to change the law to make it legal to take an action on that. So I don't know. We just got that on Friday, so we haven't gotten very far from it. But it's H118.
H118.
H1, yeah, H18.
H18. Okay.
818.
818.
Yeah, 818.
818. Got it. I have not seen it yet. I will take a look at it. Thank you.
It just came recently, so so that's what I was hoping, that maybe your special investigation unit or something could help these people. If there's only 3 or 4 of them, they have these other. I know they have these other issues.
I can tell you that the one nice thing about the unit is the unit is there to help people. And so one thing that they do is, first of all, it is clearly, as I started to indicate before, a place where we can provide a safe atmosphere for people to be interviewed for purposes of investigating whether or not a crime has been committed. But the unit itself, the facility itself, is also more than that. I mean, it's an opportunity and a mechanism by which we can point people in the directions to get help. And so they have information there. One of the things that we didn't have when we first met about this was we had an executive director. Like I said, it's Fred Sarr. We have an investigator now, Ruth Whitney, who's full-time doing these cases. They also have a victim's advocate there now, Courtney, who also works in my office, and Courtney Hudgens, who is a victim's advocate and will, come and play a role with the folks, with the victims when they arrive at the office. And if she can point them in the right direction for services, then that's a goal. Even if nothing comes from it in terms of a criminal prosecution, their hope is to get people into services, get people into counseling, get people to the resources that they need. And now, actually, the unit also has a part-time position providing some administrative support for what now seems to be a growing core of folks doing this work.
All right, now you want to also talk about the sheriff's office?
Well, I was going to say that the Special Investigative Unit is located in the sheriff's office itself.
Sheriff's office, yeah.
There was a time, as you may recall, that the sheriff was running the sheriff's department had a jail in there.
Yes, it did.
They were housing some federal prisoners. They've stopped doing that now, and the jail facility is still in the back. But some of the facilities that were being dedicated to that other purpose have been repurposed now, and like I said, they have a new conference room. They've got some office space, and they've gotten the interview room set up, like I described earlier. The child interview room. There's also an adult interview room, which is it's not child friendly in the sense that it's more adult furniture, but it's still more casual than you might see in a than just a table and a hard chair. And again, that's videotaped also, so that there's no question about who said what or what was going on during the course of the interview. But that all is taking place in the sheriff's department, in the sheriff's office.
So what kinds of issues do you deal in as state's attorney?
Wow. Murder, when they happen. The state's attorney's offices in Vermont are they're akin to what other people might think of as district attorneys in other jurisdictions. We're county prosecutors. The jurisdiction is the county. We handle cases all the way from murders when they occur, all the way to stalking cases, domestic violence cases, driving under the influence cases, down to, in some towns, open container of alcohol cases. We do retail theft cases, bad check cases, the full gamut of all types of cases, sexual assault cases. Even what we also end up doing sometimes is when law enforcement officers in Vermont handle their own traffic tickets, when those get appealed, we handle those appeals as well. So we handle a varied number of different types of law and offenses. I mean, mostly within the area of criminal law, but very different types of offenses.
So it keeps you busy.
It does keep us busy.
So, do some of these people who people believe in are doing things and they haven't actually done something, or at least they say they haven't? Lots of times people get mad at each other and say they did something which people didn't.
Sometimes, we get all, when folks come to court, if we've charged them with an offense, and obviously to be charged with an offense, someone has to come forward with at least a certain amount of evidence to suggest that there's probable cause to believe that the other person has committed an offense. But once that happens, if they're brought to court, then different people have different reactions to what happened. Any number of people come in and right off the bat they say, I did this, I know I did wrong, I just want to deal with the consequences of it. And other people plead not guilty, say they didn't do it, and eventually, sometimes those people have trials. And Addison County probably has probably a little less than one trial a month, sometimes maybe more, but about a trial a month on cases to determine whether or not someone's guilty or innocent. Actually, I know I always talk to people about that. We don't determine whether they're guilty or innocent. Actually, we determine, the jury determines whether they're guilty or not guilty. And as you may know, the burden of proof on the state is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So,
Yes.
If we have a case and we file a case and we can prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt, then the person is found guilty. If we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, even if the jury thinks they probably did it, they can be found not guilty. But most cases in Vermont, and Addison County is no different, there's a plea of some kind entered. It's more than 95% of cases resolved by a plea, but there are still some trials, and juries still decide cases. In Addison County, there was a jury trial last month.
And the public has to be part of this.
Public is part of it. It's a fascinating process. We bring in, the court brings in individuals. They're brought in from the community, and they're brought in for a process that we call jury selection, where the lawyers go through a process of asking questions of the jurors to determine who might know the parties. Maybe they know the victim, maybe they know the defendant, maybe they know some of the witnesses, and maybe they know them too well, and there's a reason that they shouldn't be sitting on the jury, but that it should be other people. Some folks, they have particularly strong feelings about certain types of offenses. For some people, it's just too difficult maybe to sit on a domestic violence or a sexual assault case, and we talk to them about that, and if they feel that it would be too difficult for them to sit on that type of case, then maybe we don't have them sit on it, and we have them sit on a different type of case. When we go through that process, and by the time we're done, we get a jury of 14 people, 12 jurors and 2 alternates, and they hear the case. They hear the case, they hear the evidence, and then they render a verdict. It's one of those systems that's interesting. You work in it day to day, and sometimes it can seem like, the process, this is what we always do. But it's really awesome when you think about the fact that we have a system of government in Vermont and the United States where individual ordinary citizens are called in to decide at the end of the day whether or not someone did something. It's not decided by the prosecutor at the end of the day. It's not decided by the judge even. It's decided at the end of the day by the jury of community members to determine whether or not there's enough evidence to say that somebody is guilty of an offense. It's a marvelous system.
Yeah, and with some of them, people can ask not to have a jury trial.
Sure.
And or they can have 6 people for a trial. Not yet. They're still all 12.
Right. It's still all 12.
Actually, they have 13. The 13th one sits there in case one of the 12 gets sick or something happened, and the 13th one then becomes the 12th.
Right. We actually usually take 14.
Oh, 14.
And so there's 2 extras, 2 alternates.
Oh.
And some judges decide who the alternates are by random selection at the end, and others pick the alternates up front. But yes, in case someone can't make it through to the end of the trial for any reason, that we'll take some alternate jurors, just because you get all the way through the trial. Some trials last days. You want to make sure that there's enough people there at the end of the day to decide the verdict. There's no provision in Vermont at this time to do jury trials of less than 12. But every now and then something might happen, and people might agree to go with one less. That hasn't happened in my memory in a long time, but I know we've talked about it. And yes, if someone can even say, look, I don't want to have a jury trial. I'm happy to have a judge decide this case, and sometimes we do that. We try the case directly to a judge. But in every criminal case, the defendant has a right to have that case heard. But that's the defendant's decision, and the defendant has that right to determine whether or not they want to plead guilty or no contest, or have that trial, or whether they want to have a trial in front of that jury or a judge. But the defendant gets to pick.
We're thinking about changing the law and the court so that you don't go to the next court with appeal, you go straight to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that I like that, because I don't know what the Supreme Court does for its work. Like, I know that when you have a case, you go to the Supreme Court at the end, and you talk 5 minutes for the defendant and 5 minutes for the plaintiff, and then there's some questions, and it's over with. But with an appeal, it might be a whole different ballgame of time and so forth. So
I can't really
we haven't decided
Right.
yet, but
And truthfully, I don't know that I can really speak to that, because the criminal cases that we do all go directly to the Supreme Court. If they're appealed, they go from the Superior Court directly to the Supreme Court, and sometimes if they appeal. And sometimes they have those 5-minute arguments, and sometimes they have the 15-minute arguments. In fact, we have a case coming up in the not too distant future where we have a 15-minute argument. So.
I mean, the plaintiff and the defendant can both argue for 15 minutes,
Yep.
but it's they're arguing, not the people.
Well, it'll be in this case, it'll be the state's attorney's office, and it'll be one of the criminal defendants who was convicted at trial, and it'll be in front of the Supreme Court, and it'll be in front, I think, of the full court.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're working on licenses, cars. That if you got a suspended license, you have to to do the interlock. And we're working on it. We haven't come to any conclusions on it, but it's quite an issue. And like to know how also there, if you don't pay child support, you lose your license. If you don't have Fish and Wildlife, you don't have a license. And we thought, what is this? It should only be for issues like, we're only arguing for things like going through a red light, going through a stop sign, speeding we're not doing the criminal ones. It's just those. So there's a lot of work in that. I don't know if you have any ideas as to what we should do or can't do.
Well, I can speak to, I can't speak to the child support issue. I can speak to the Fish and Wildlife cases. There's a provision involving, if you get a Fish and Wildlife offense, they suspend. I don't know that they suspend your driver's license, but they do suspend your right to hunt and fish.
Sometimes one of the things, and so we're trying to figure out which ones have the license suspension and which ones don't. And it's quite a lot of work to think about doing this, because what happened in Chittenden County, where everybody came in and got $20, and they for all that. Sometimes people had 40 and 50 tickets, and they've had to pay $20 on each one. But but now people think, well, we're going to go to this and pay $20, so we're not paying our bill. We'll just let it go. So we'd have to work about that, whether we're going to do this or not. So if you have any ideas of things you want on that issue, but you don't do much motor vehicle.
No, we do motor vehicle. It's just go ahead.
Okay.
I can't speak to the child support piece. I understand there is a bill in front of the legislature now that would eliminate the suspension for non-payment, as I understand it. And I'm happy to talk to you at some point about that if you want to. And it'd be interesting to see what the legislature does with that.
Yeah, well, we won't. If we do it once, we won't do it again for a long time. So people think we're going to do it or not. I mean, we're not going to do it a second time if we do it this way. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.